Could you give a little bit of an idea of what the selection process is like? Step by step.
Right.
How do you get them? Do they go straight to you? Do they go through a committee? Give us a little bit.
Well, I'll deal with on my end. What happens is that once Katha can deal with the administrative aspect, but once they're in our spreadsheets, then there's myself and several other people who are on the selection committee, and we look at each film, and we go through and watch all the way through, no matter how long they might be. And then we score them on a scale of 1 to 10. And we also then write in our comments, and I'm looking specifically, and I ask them, are there emotional moments that really stand out? Please make note of any outstanding performance or something that really stands out, the cinematography, the directing, the writing. Make a note of that and just a brief note on what the story is as quickly as possible, because when you go back through all these films in December, 9.5 really scored well, but what's it about? What's in it? What's going on? And I need, those notes are so very important. And the other thing is I look at the scores, and for example, if we see something that scored a 4 from one particular individual, and I looked at it and it was a 9, then I'm going to go, there's something going on here. This is what I like. So we've got some polarization happening. Or it could be the other way around. I gave it a 4, somebody else gave it a 9. And then I still have to look at it and say, well, what's going on here? Because this is polarizing. Maybe there's something going on here this person didn't like, but I find it to be, oh my God, this is really challenging. So we'll get the same kind of reaction perhaps from the audience. It'll go like, no, yes, no, whatever. That's exciting. And so that's where we go. We go through all of that process, and then we end up looking at the end of choosing the ones that seem to be, that are well crafted and that follow through on being true to their own idea.
So before we get there, everybody submits through the usual suspects within the industry, and they go to our website. It directs them to whichever one of them, Film Freeway, Without a Box, and there's others for the Iranian filmmakers and some of the European filmmakers, etc. And then when they come through on those platforms, then I start logging them into a spreadsheet. And I'm keeping an eye on making sure that everybody's keeping abreast of things. Right now, we're at 70 some odd. We've only been open for a month. We're going to go through December, and it's clipping right along. And people are keeping abreast. And then on this Tuesday, just to kind of shake things up, we're having the screening committee over, and I think everybody should share with everybody else their favorite, their least favorite, and then we should all see together some that we haven't seen yet.
Right.
It's very hard to watch all the films. I'm going to be honest. There are times where I wish that he would not go all the way through with the film. I mean, you can tell. You get 20 or 30 minutes into it, and if the sound is awful and atrocious, etc. But Don always says, what if that's a choice? What if that's a choice? And I missed it, and I'm the only guy on the planet who missed it. And I say, okay, and I have asked him, I said, was there the great reveal that the sound issues were a design ploy? That hasn't really been the case now. But he's a filmmaker, and I think that's karmically what you're doing also, is that you don't want to be the guy who doesn't watch the person's film. And I applaud that, but it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of him. He needs a lot of repairing in December and January, because these are emotional, personal films.
Yeah,
Definitely.
When watching these films, it's always interesting. Well, at least I think it's interesting.
Right.
A lot of times, I'll see these incredible credits, booming, amazingly constructed credits, and then the movie starts and just drops off. And what happens is what's happening is you can totally control with technology every little nuance of that credit. And then the movie starts, and you've got all these other parts out there. You have actors, and sound, and background, and everything else, and all of a sudden, that emotion and that impact with the boom, boom sounds and all that, it's like, just drops off. And I go, oh gosh, that's too bad. It should have just simply said, John's film. And so it's always interesting to go, wow, okay, here we go. Let's see if it holds up to the credits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the first, 10 seconds.
Right, right.
We send out the letters to the filmmakers who are not in first, and we kind of let that, because remember, this is all over the world, and that's a lot of hurtedness that's going on, and people need my undivided attention when they email back.
Right.
And they want to vent, or they want to see their scores, etc. So then we let that settle, and then we let the people know who are in, because then that also causes a lot of stuff on social media, and that's hard to see as a person whose film didn't get in. So we need people to get a little scar tissue before that happens, and it's a hard position to be a person who's in a position to say your art is not going to be screened. We try not to say your art is not good. It's just, unfortunately, we're not going to screen it. It's my least favorite thing of the whole deal. If I could look ahead 10 years from now, we would be able to have opportunities for people who had great ideas, but who the craftsmanship is not there.
Right.
Have some kind of works in progress situation to cultivate and develop young people. But right now, we're building something that has to be commercially sustainable. The audience has to trust him, and the filmmakers have to trust them, and they have to feel that their film is going to be screened next to a film that is the same level, if not better. We want to screen this on the best equipment possible. We're screening at the Museum of the Moving Image, which doesn't get much prettier than that. Not pretty. They're pretty images. And then at the historical Kaufman Astoria Studios, which is good images also, because we retrofit that space ourselves. So we want people to feel really thrilled about screening with us.
Right.
And we want it to be competitive. We want you to feel, 4 or 5 years, we wanted people to say, did you get into Queens? Did you get in? Or like, oh, I saw your film at Queens. And that needs to mean something.
Yeah, projection